Django Unchained is set in the southern United States in 1858, during the brutal era of slavery. The story begins on a dark night when a group of chained slaves is being forced to walk through the wilderness by two slave traders. Among these exhausted and wounded slaves is a man named Django. The slaves are tired, barefoot, and treated like property rather than human beings. Suddenly, a strange wagon approaches them. The wagon belongs to a German bounty hunter named King Schultz. Schultz used to be a dentist, but he now makes a living by hunting criminals and collecting rewards offered by the government. He stops the slave traders because he is searching for three wanted criminals known as the Brittle Brothers, and he believes one of the slaves can identify them. Schultz asks the traders about Django and tries to buy him. The traders refuse and threaten Schultz, but Schultz quickly shoots one of them and forces the other to release Django. Schultz explains to Django that if he helps him identify the Brittle Brothers, he will grant him his freedom and even pay him for his help. Django, who has spent his entire life as a slave, finds it difficult to understand the idea of freedom at first. However, he agrees to work with Schultz. Schultz treats Django with respect and kindness, something Django has never experienced before. They travel to a nearby town where Schultz buys Django proper clothes and introduces him as a free man. The townspeople are shocked to see a black man riding a horse and walking freely beside a white man. Schultz begins teaching Django how to use a gun and how to act like a bounty hunter. Django learns quickly and shows natural skill and determination. Together they track down the Brittle Brothers. When they finally find them working on a plantation, Django identifies them, and Schultz allows him to take revenge. Django shoots one of the brothers, while Schultz kills the others. After completing the job, Schultz officially gives Django his freedom papers. Instead of parting ways, Schultz offers Django a partnership for the winter season. He explains that in winter it is easier to track criminals because the leaves fall from the trees and tracks in the snow are visible. Django agrees to work with him, but he also reveals his personal goal. Django tells Schultz about his wife, Broomhilda, who was sold away from him by slave owners after they both tried to escape. Broomhilda was taken to another plantation somewhere in the south. Django dreams of finding her and freeing her from slavery. Schultz becomes interested in Django's story and decides to help him rescue her. During the winter, Django and Schultz work together as bounty hunters and collect several rewards. Django becomes a skilled gunfighter and grows more confident. Eventually they gather enough information to locate Broomhilda. They discover that she has been sold to a wealthy plantation owner named Calvin Candy, who owns a large plantation called Candyland in Mississippi. Candy is known to be a cruel and sadistic man who enjoys watching slaves fight each other to the death in brutal matches known as Mandingo fights. Schultz realizes that simply asking Candy to sell Broomhilda could raise suspicion. Instead, he creates a clever plan. He and Django pretend to be wealthy buyers interested in purchasing strong slaves for Mandingo fighting. With this false story, they travel to Candyland and meet Calvin Candy. Candy is impressed by Schultz's apparent wealth and becomes excited about making a profitable deal. Django plays the role of a tough slave trainer who understands fighting slaves. At the plantation, Django finally sees Broomhilda again after years of separation. However, he must pretend not to know her in order to avoid suspicion. Broomhilda is frightened and confused when she sees Django acting like a stranger. Meanwhile, Candy's loyal house slave, Stephen, begins to notice unusual behavior. Stephen is extremely intelligent and deeply loyal to Candy. After observing Django carefully, Stephen realizes that Django and Schultz are not really interested in Mandingo fighters. He figures out that Django has come to rescue Broomhilda. Stephen secretly informs Candy about the truth. Candy becomes furious but hides his anger at first. When Schultz prepares to complete the fake deal, Candy suddenly confronts them and reveals that he knows their real plan. He forces them into a new deal, demanding a huge amount of money for Broomhilda's freedom. Schultz and Django realize they have no choice but to accept if they want to save her life. Schultz reluctantly signs the papers, but Candy continues to insult and humiliate him. Schultz becomes increasingly disgusted by Candy's cruelty and arrogance. Unable to tolerate him any longer, Schultz suddenly shoots Candy in the chest, killing him instantly. However, this action leads to chaos. Candy's guards immediately shoot and kill Schultz in return. Django quickly grabs a gun and begins fighting the guards inside the mansion. A violent gun battle erupts, and Django kills many of the plantation's armed men. Eventually he runs out of ammunition and is captured by the remaining guards. Instead of killing him immediately, they decide to torture and sell him to slave traders. Django is chained once again and placed on a wagon to be taken to a mining company where slaves are worked to death. However, during the journey Django uses his intelligence to trick the traders. He convinces them that he knows about a hidden bounty worth a large reward. When the traders loosen his chains, Django suddenly attacks them, kills them, and escapes. Now free again, Django returns to Candyland with one goal: revenge and rescue. He arrives at the plantation pretending to be a slave trader bringing prisoners for Candy's men. Once inside, he surprises the guards and begins another violent shootout. Django kills the remaining overseers and gunmen one by one. Finally he confronts Steven, who had betrayed him earlier. Steven tries to insult and threaten Django, but Django shoots him in the legs and leaves him inside the mansion. Django rescues Broomhilda and prepares to leave the plantation. Before escaping, he plants explosives around the mansion as a final act of revenge. Django and Broomhilda ride away from Candyland on horseback. Moments later, the mansion explodes in a massive blast, destroying the symbol of Candy's cruel empire. Django and Broomhilda finally reunite as free people after years of suffering and separation. Their journey ends with hope, freedom, and justice after a long and painful struggle against slavery and oppression.